Hey, this is Jamey, and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite game mechanism in Takenoko. I played Takenoko a couple of years ago. It's been around for a while, but I just recently got it back to the table for the first time in a long time. A couple two-player games with Megan. Had a lot of fun with it. And today's video is going to be a little different because I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism, but I'm also going to mention a mechanism that is circumstantially great, but I think could have been designed slightly differently, which isn't something I would normally say about a game, but Takenoko has plenty of success. Antoine Bauza is very successful. I'm sure you can handle a little bit of constructive criticism here. That mechanism is the weather die. I really like the concept of this weather die. At the beginning of your turn, you roll this die and you get a good thing. There are 5 faces and then a wild face where you can choose whatever you want with that. I love that this isn't a bad thing. In many games, the weather die would be a bad thing that happens. Takenoko, it's a good thing. A good thing happens to you. However, sometimes the good things just aren't as good as other good things. So, like the wild is always good because you get to choose what you want to do. This is an extra action, which is fantastic. Circumstantially, the wind is good. Wind gives you it lets you take the same action twice. So it doesn't give you an extra action like this one does, but it gives you the ability to take the same action twice, which will tie into my favorite mechanism, which is sometimes good. And then some of the other ones, like you add bamboo or eat bamboo, things like that. Many of them are circumstantially good. And the problem that can happen with this die is if a player ends up rolling something that they really don't want or is circumstantially bad for them, or if they keep rolling the same face of the die that isn't good for them or isn't as good as other faces of the die, it can not feel all that good. So one option that Bauza could have done here is to give each player a mini deck of 6 cards, one of which shows each of these faces. Each player shuffles that mini deck of cards. Instead of rolling the die, they just draw one of the cards at the beginning of their turn. They draw a weather card. So it's still that random fun element. Takes a little bit of agency away from the player, but adds that just a little bit of variability into how each turn and each game of Takenoko feels. But by doing that, you ensure that you're never going to get hit with the same die face over and over again because it's cards. You can draw a card, that'll be your weather card, then you draw another one and repeat. So I think that's one instance where sometimes the die, as wonderful as it is to roll a die, can maybe be better supplanted by a small deck of cards that removes that possibility of getting the same thing over and over again. That's my thought there. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that before I dovetail into my favorite mechanism, which is the action selection system. You've probably heard me complain on this channel about how I don't like action menus. And by that I mean when you have a little reference card that says, hey, you get X number of actions to take this turn, here are the things that you can do with those actions. Not a big fan of that. But it's not that I don't like action selection. Many of my games have action selection. It's just the format and the user interface makes a big difference in my opinion. And Takenoko, I think, does that really well. Your action selection choices are here, so they show it in. They could have added text. I don't think it really was needed. By not having text, it feels less like an action menu. But this is essentially an action menu. You're choosing from drawing tiles, irrigation, moving the farmer, moving the panda and eating some bamboo, or drawing a new objective card. And to gamify this a little bit, each player has 2 action tokens, and you place them on different actions. You can't choose the same action twice in the same round unless you have the special wind ability from the weather die. And so you're actually placing these tokens on the mat. You kind of, there's a tactile feel to it, and just the gamification of choosing 2 different actions lends to having those tokens and makes it feel less like an action menu. I really like this presentation. I think it's a great example of a way that you can have very simple action selection that is essentially an action menu, but doesn't feel like a checklist or a menu of options to choose from. It feels more, this feels more immersive to me than the action checklist or action menu. So yeah, I really like this presentation. I think it's a great example of that. If you have another favorite mechanism in Takenoko, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Or if you want to discuss any other games that have great examples of action menus that don't feel like action menus, or games that have randomness and variability, but can avoid some of the pitfalls that can happen when you're just rolling a die, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks.